Girls should be mobilized to stop boys becoming a waste of space, says Pierre, as he urges them to expect more from relationships. The prospect of being shunned by girls would be an incredibly powerful incentive to prevent boys from failing in life. They're trying to use shame instead of incentives. Look at that. He pointed out that many boys tried to copy influencers such as Andrew Tate instead of striving to become useful citizens. There's the buzzword, big bad meme guy, Andrew Tate. They always put him in every single article. This issue is particularly stark for boys from a white working class background who are the lowest achieving group in the country. Damn, they shitting on the white boys. Damn, they're going crazy. Now, guys, I've been talking about this for forever, and people called me crazy, but here we are. Now, we all know that men do all of the important jobs that keep society running, and when I say these jobs are mostly done by men, I'm not talking about a 55% men split and there's a 45% female split. I'm talking about 85% plus of the people who work in these industries are men. You're talking about truck drivers. You're talking about firefighters, police officers, waste management, construction, plumbers, electricity. So pretty much all of the jobs that keep society civilized because the lights are done by men. And I've always said that it's not a smart idea to demonize the only force that keeps society safe and civil for women and children. It's not a smart idea. Well, we've been running into an issue, and that issue is a lack of incentive for young men. There are a lot of young men that are growing up now, regardless of what you believe. This is what they're seeing in the world. They're seeing that there's not enough young women that prioritize family in their fertile years. These women want to chase careers now. Even if they do the right thing and devote their entire life to providing for a woman and their family, a woman can just take half of everything they've ever worked for just because she's unhappy. And a lot of these young men don't want to work hard because they don't feel like they're ever going to work hard enough to own land in the country that they are expected to die for. So because there's a lack of incentive, men are incentive-based beings, and eventually they're just going to stop being productive because men will choose freedom over responsibility any day. And the only time they'll choose responsibility over freedom is if they have to become responsible for people they love. And if they don't have families, they don't have wives, and they don't have land, property, or communities, then they're just going to choose to do the bare minimum because young men don't need much to survive. Give them a pizza, give them a mattress on the floor, and a video game, and most young men will be happy. So you're seeing more young men want to stay home and do the bare minimum at work in order to just get by. And I'm not saying this is the way it should be, but I'm just saying that from what I see, this is the direction that we're going in. And for all the boomers, the older people that are going to go, these young men are just soft. They need to work harder. They don't care about your shame anymore. For all the young women that are going, men need to be more productive and more responsible and become these men that we want them to be, and then we'll be a comfortable marriage and blah-bitty bloop. They don't care about the shame anymore. That's the issue. Until these incentive structures are changed a little bit into their favor, they're going to decide to be indifferent to society, meaning they're just going to be hands off. They're going to let you live out the fantasy that we've promoted, and that is the future is female. The only issue is people are starting to realize that you can't run society based on cushy office jobs like secretaries and HR. Men are necessary, and society is going to learn that the hard way if they don't wake up. But let's go ahead and get into the article. This is by the Daily Mail. Girls should be mobilized to stop boys becoming a waste of space, says Pierre, as he urges them to expect more from relationships. The former labor education secretary said schools should empower girls to expect more from the boys they have relationships with. The funniest part about this line is young men don't care about what young women want for relationships. Young men care about what young women want for sex. That's why in the past, young women were supposed to want marriage before they gave up the sex, because young men are more focused on the sex than they are the responsibility. Now, once they fall in love, they take on that responsibility, but that commitment and expectation of responsibility was expected before you gave up the sex. These young women don't even have the self-control in order to enact this. With the hypersexuality of young women pushed through the media, pushed through pop culture, pushed through the sexual revolution and feminism, young women don't even have the self-control to actually enact this. Young men don't care about being in relationships with young women who are giving up the sex for free to other men before the relationship. But I digress. I'm just saying what I see. Let's keep going. It would stop boys taking it as read that girls will be interested in them even with poor work ethic and attitude, he said. Women no longer have sex with men based on their characteristics. Women have sex on men based on how attractive they are, how tall they are, and how well they can dress now. So a boomer telling young men to just work harder in order to get the girls doesn't work. He's out of touch. Let's keep going. The prospect of being shunned by girls would be an incredibly powerful incentive to prevent boys from failing in life. They're trying to use shame instead of incentives. Look at that. And that's part of the problem with the boomers that are in power now. Now they don't understand these problems, and instead of getting an understanding of these problems, they're choosing to just ignore them. They're trying to use shame instead of tangible incentives for young men. What happens when young men just go, we don't care? And they're saying this like society, pop culture, movies, commercials, everything haven't shamed young men, boys, and men for the past 50 years. That's all we've been getting is shamed from every angle by women, the government, everything. In every feasible way, they've been saying that men are these demons. Men are the problem in society. Men just want to hurt women. And now they're saying that men should be productive just for the greater good with no incentive to themselves. He pointed out that many boys tried to copy influencers such as Andrew Tate instead of striving to become useful citizens. There's the buzzword, big bad mean guy, Andrew Tate. They always put him in every single article. If you think that young boys looking up to Andrew Tate is the cause of the problem instead of a symptom of the problem, you are literally retarded at this point. And I dare say, the boys who are probably aspiring to be similar to Andrew Tate are probably more productive than the boys that are looking up to the masculine figures that are pushed in front of them in pop culture. To combat this, Lord Blunkett, 78, suggests schools promote positive masculinity to form the fathers of the future. The father of the future who has to go to work for 60 hours a week to barely afford a house, and he can get his kids taken away from him by his wife just because she's unhappy. The fathers of the future. And by positive masculinity, they mean men that are willing to do whatever women want them to do, and gay boys. Because anything outside of those two narratives is seen as toxic masculinity or something they call fragile masculinity. You shouldn't want to be like Andrew Tate. You should want to be like Sam Smith. That's positive masculinity. He told the Mail on Sunday, we need to mobilize the girls to ensure that they get the message across that if you are a waste of space, we don't want to know you. Brother, even the men who aren't a waste of space, which is crazy, by the way, even the men who aren't a waste of space, women don't want to know. And this is how you know this guy lives under a rock and he's a boomer, because he doesn't even understand this. This guy is Patrick Starr. Lord Blunkett, who grew up in poverty, addressed concerns about the underachievement of boys. Bro grew up in a time where a house cost a stick of gum. They have always performed worse than girls at GCSE and are less likely to enter university. Yeah, that's because all of the schools are ran by women on a curriculum that mostly benefits women. Everybody knows that young men have to do things with their hands and they have to be active, and school does not lead to those results. Boys need to be shown the link between hard work and a good future in their early teens before they switch off and see it as not for them, he said. Adding that boys who want a relationship with young women should be shown they need to step up. Yeah, young men who step up nowadays get rewarded with being a stepdad to somebody else's kids. And that's not a problem if you already got your own kids. It makes sense to be in a relationship with somebody who already has kids because they'll understand it better. But if you don't already have your family, why should you want to step up to be a stepfather? And that's the situation that a lot of young men are in because women are giving the sex away for free. This year, the National Education Union revealed a rise in boys becoming radicalized by online incel culture and Andrew Tate, a self-proclaimed misogynist YouTuber. Often, these pupils become disengaged in school and develop dark views about women. Blobbity bloop, same song. Women can literally say kill all men, and misogynists are the issue. Lord Blunkett said, we're going to have to engage every mechanism, and one of those is for girls to say, boys, we're not going to have anything to do with you unless you start engaging with your own future, because otherwise we'll be carrying you. Impossible. Women don't carry families and women don't carry society. Women don't work for family. Women work for themselves. You give a man $1 million, he'll say, great, I get to take care of a family. You give a woman $1 million, she'll say, great, I don't need a man and I don't need children. When you help men, you help women, you help children, and you help society. When you help women, you just help women, usually at the compromise of men, children, and society. And by the way, I do want to say this. I do believe it is important for young men to find purpose and to work hard. I don't think that young men should just be doing nothing. I do believe that idle hands is the devil's playground. I think that young women are blessed with the ability to be born with a sense of purpose. It's literally built inside of them. If they have children, they'll have a sense of fulfillment and purpose. Because young men don't have that privilege, young men are tasked with toiling. So young men have to discover. Young men have to find their own purpose or create their own purpose. And to do that, you got to discover, you got to explore, you got to be energetic, and you have to be productive. I do agree with that. I disagree with the point that they should do it for women, and I disagree with the idea idea that young men now are going to be predominantly incentivized by young women to do it. The biggest problem is in the past, most young men found purpose in religion and family, and some of them found purpose in their jobs or careers, but usually your jobs and careers are just a means to an end so you can provide for your family. Most men don't find fulfillment from their jobs. They found it in family and religion, and with the death of both of those two things, all you're left with is trying to be productive and finding something to do with your time. That sends a message to young men who feel like victims. It's your own fault in your hands. It's not somebody else's fault. You're a waste of space. It's yours. Damn, these people talking like they don't need young men. They think shitting on young men is going to inspire them to want to take on the burdens of society. The peer who served as Tony Blair's education secretary said during his childhood in Sheffield, I don't know how to say that word, boys would often go into apprenticeship age 15 where they would be mentored by men. I actually agree with that. I think that that's a good thing. Teaching young men a trade so that they can create their own opportunities with their own hands instead of depending on other people to give them opportunities. I agree with that. They were role models and they were support mechanisms, he said. This challenge to boys should not be a threat. What you've got to do is demonstrate your masculinity in an incredibly positive way. He said the school should challenge boys to raise their aspirations to lead to a meaningful life contributing to society. This in turn would lead to supportive family structures if they become fathers. The only problem is the women can destroy the structure if they're unhappy. That's the problem. And you're not dealing with that problem by just telling young men to keep stepping up. You tell them to step up and then you cut them at the knees and you take away all of the authority in their own homes. And taking on the responsibility of a home without having the authority inside of your home is damn near slavery. Responsibility without authority is damn near slavery. You can't be responsible for something if you don't have authority over it. Lord Blunkett said the fact that so many boys are ending up as NEET, not in education, employment, and training, is bad for them, bad for the economy, and corrosive to the social fabric. This issue is particularly stark for boys from a white working class background who are the lowest achieving group in the country. Damn, they shitting on the white boys? Damn, they going crazy. He said migrant families in the UK see education as a ladder to prosperity, but some boys from poor British backgrounds think that this is not for them. What we've got to do is work out what would have the same effect and energizing driving force for more traditional communities, in particular where white working class boys don't see the point, he said. He advocated schools signposting more work experience and apprenticeship opportunities so that pupils see the relationship between experience of work and something that they're interested in and their continuance in engaging with education. Yeah, young women have about 4 times as many scholarship opportunities as young men have. Maybe you start with that if you want young men to go back to college. But I think young men have given up on college because it's an indoctrination camp. And especially in America, it doesn't seem to convert to prosperity as much anymore. Nowadays, you got to be 22 with 10 years of experience. I'm much more on the side of trades because you can create your own opportunities, but it is hard on the body though, and it does take a lot of education. Yeah, guys, but this is what we was talking about. People are starting to wake up and they're starting to realize that society needs men. We knew it was going in this direction, and I do think that young men should be productive, but I don't think that young men should be productive for women. I think that young men should be productive for themselves, and if a woman sees the direction that you're going and sees your purpose and she thinks that she can add on to that, then maybe you should consider her in a relationship. But doing things just to appease women isn't a good direction to go in. There are a lot of young men who are now indifferent to what's going on in society and in the world because they've been left behind. And until they feel like they've been incentivized and prioritized, then they're not going to join in on it. I'm not saying this is the way it should be. I'm saying this seems to be the way it is. And to be honest, I've always seen it as going in one or two directions, and I think that this is the better one. Indifference, a separation from society, a step back to let you play out the futurist female fantasy. Because historically speaking, young men didn't become indifferent. They became murderous. And I don't think that'd be good for anybody. Let me know in the comments below if this video was a W or L, and give me the HBO special. That's a Help a Brother Out special. Hit the like and the subscribe button for more content. Till next time.